So, I've been thinking a lot lately about a saying that goes, "The only constant in life is change." And I think um, Heraclitus, I think it's pronounced, was a Greek philosopher that actually coined the phrase back in 500 BC. Um, and I think it's also fair to say that our fear of change is also the only constant in life. Um, I've had a lot of change in my life, probably a lot of people have, especially over the past year and a half. And for me, it's been even more. I made some decisions pre-COVID, and that put me on a pretty aggressive path for change. And then COVID hit, so that multiplied that change significantly, probably more so than any other time in my life. And I'm a believer that change is the only constant in life. And I'm also well aware that my biggest fear in my life is change. And I find it really ironic, not just for myself, but for anybody dealing with change and how we react to it. And some people react a lot more severely than others. I have in my past as well. But I think that's also my subconscious reaction to things before I become more conscious about what's happening to me and how I truly want to deal with it. But my, the funny thing about how people react to change is that it being the only constant in the universe, every blade of grass, every molecule, everything is in constant flux. It's in constant evolution. The house you live in would eventually just crumble and fall to the ground. It's in constant movement and change. And I also believe that change is a necessary element for us to evolve as human beings as well. So I think there's a correlation between getting rid of the old to let in the new, and resisting change is probably one of the most unhealthy things we can do, in my opinion, as human beings. And again, the fact that we resist what is so relevant and so much part of the world, the universe that we live in, is such a contradiction. When I do truly embrace change, I do find that things go a lot smoother for me. And half the battle is, whether it's subconsciously or even consciously sometimes, half the battle is my fear of change and my fear of the unknown. And that's where mindfulness really comes in, because it helps me to stay in the moment. So while there may be some change down the road for me, or even happening at that moment, a moment's worth of change is so much easier for me to process and handle and accept than thinking about the accumulation of change that is coming at me from down the road. And by the way, most of the time when I try to elaborate in my mind on what that change is going to look like, it's never the same thing as what happens in reality. And we all know that, right? We all have lived through that, that funny trick that life does to us as thinking human beings, and in thinking that we can predict the future, or at least be fearful of a future that doesn't exist and usually never comes. So again, getting back to change being the only constant in life, it's just, I'm thinking about it so much these days, because part of me gets really excited about the fact that there's change coming and there's just change happening, because I know that it's part of an evolution for me, that means that good things are coming down the road. There's always, what one of the other sayings that, and I don't know who coined this one, but everything we want in life is behind fear. I'm not sure that's completely correct, but I do believe that anytime I've walked through fear, there's always a reward on the other side. It may not be what I wanted, but it's definitely not what I just had. It's definitely not where I just came from. And it's usually a pretty good lesson that I didn't anticipate learning, at the very least. So for me, today, it's really about embracing change and welcoming change, because I've had times in my life where I've probably on purpose manufactured a stagnant life. You get so comfortable in all of your habits, and we're creatures of habit, right? We hear that all the time. And so you get really comfortable in getting up in the morning at the same time and brushing your teeth, and all of your routines that make us feel more secure and more in control of our lives. And maybe that's part of this, right? This is not maybe, it's definitely part of this, is the lack of control scares us. The more control we think we have over our world and our lives and our children's lives and our loved ones' lives and our work life and our romantic lives, and the more we become more, unhappy, because we ultimately learn the hard way that we have no control over any of this. Not really. But what we do have control over is how we see things, how we perceive things. Wayne Dyer, one of my favorite sayings that he says is, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. I've lived the truth of that. It's oversimplifying the idea that, and a lot of times it is, being aware of your subconscious reaction to things and becoming conscious. I don't know many people that exist in a purely conscious level. I would love to, but I do know it's a daily, if not moment by moment, practice of being mindful, using mindfulness to become self-aware enough to catch when you're having a subconscious reaction to something that was embedded in you 20, 30 years ago, or 10 years ago if you're not as old as I am. Catching that and replacing it with something that your conscious self, yourself that you are today, can have a better, more healthy reaction or relationship with whatever that thing is that you're reacting to, right? So, so many of us, including me in my past, have lived months, if not years, of subconscious existence. Surely society has, although, the past 30 years, I would say safely, maybe 40 years, maybe even 50, starting in the 60s, a real awakening has slowly been happening for people, not living so subconsciously anymore. And so I think that plays a very deep role in our reaction to change, and our feeling of a loss of control. And Pema Chodron talks about this a lot, and she talks about embracing change and leaning into the things that fear us, right? So you lean into anger and resentment and pain and loss, and by leaning into it, you you truly experience it, and then you wind up taking the power away from it. It wasn't nearly as frightening as you thought it was, and you don't deny yourself whatever lessons that it is that you need to learn in order to move on from that, that feeling or that emotion or that event in your life. Again, as a concept, it's very frightening to think about it, but what's the alternative, right? People spend lifetimes running from things that they never, either they didn't even know existed subconsciously, or they knew and were too afraid to look at it. And so they turn to drugs or alcohol or sex or media or anything to distract them, right? Anything to avoid ultimately the change that needs to happen within you. So I'm thinking a lot about this. And I wanted to share it with you all because it's important. I'm still going through a significant amount of change in my life at my age, and it's okay. I'm okay with it most of the time. Sometimes when there's too many things at one time, it can be overwhelming. But what is being overwhelmed? What is that really? It's just a lack of ability to process what's happening to you because there's too many things happening at one time. So you just pick them off one by one. You get organized. Any good organization will get rid of a feeling of being overwhelmed pretty quickly, even if it's just organizing your thoughts or your feelings, right? You just got to take a moment and allow yourself to process. So I know I've been a little bit all over the place, but I think it's all kind of comes down to waking up from our subconscious existence, realizing and embracing the fact that if you lean into the change, if you accept the change, if you live a life that is mysteriously unexpected, that's pretty exciting stuff. And that's the life that we live. That's the world we live. That's the universe that we live in. Because it's all evolving constantly. And it's the only constant in our lives today. So embrace it is my message. And live a life of mystery and wonderment and change. And miracles, I think, will happen. They happen to me all the time. And again, it's not the miracle I may want or plan on having, but it's definitely a evolution of sorts. Sorry, my thing fell down for some reason. It's definitely a process that we all need to embrace. So that's my message for you today. And sorry about that little glitch at the end, but my thingamajiggy, I love that word, my thingamajiggy ran out of battery. So, but hey, there you go. Something I can't control. Have a wonderful day and be well. And thanks.